Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP. Welcome to my world for the last 2.5 decades. I got shipped off to Lompoc in 2001. I came off the bus, had to go through an S.I.S review. You know, there's about 16 dudes, about 16 of us came off the bus. We're all in a whole tank, waiting to be interviewed one at a time. You know, usually you go do your interview, 5-10 minute interview, you come back. But some people, when they go, you don't see them return. Me being new, being fresh in the system, I don't know what that means. Some of them return back. But when it was my turn to be interviewed by the S.I.S, they looked at my file, they went through it. You know, they got me standing up in front of their desk. There's 3 of them in there, trying to make me sweat it out. But I knew what to expect already. You know, I experienced it going through Oklahoma. Before you get to the prison, after you catch the plane here from Utah, you go to Oklahoma. I mean, on our plane, we went down to Arizona to pick up some more people. And then from Arizona, we went to Oklahoma. And the flight was rough because I get air sickness. You know, I'm shackled. I'm in a black box. I got shackles on my legs. I'm pressed up against the window. You know, flying over to Arizona was all right, but sitting in Arizona in the heat, because it was like August, the end of August of 2001, and the heat and the fume from the airplane, and then when it took off, you know, all the combination just turned my stomach, and my face was in a bag for the rest of the flight. Like, I threw so much, there was nothing left. It was just green bile. It was nasty. And when you're going through transit, it's not good not to have your head straight, because you don't know who you're going to run into. Me, I'm just entering the system, so I don't have any enemies yet. But other people that's been in the system, they already have enemies. In transit, back then you weren't segregated. You come through, somebody might might spot you that knew you from another spot for whatever reason. Never fail. Every time I've come through transit since then, it's always an incident, you know? So, going to Oklahoma, they're reading my case. It's like, hey, you know where you're going? You know where you're going? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Florence, Colorado. It's like, all right. They process me. You know, they take everybody. Now we're in the holding tank, waiting to go to the different pods, because from there we either stay a week, up to 3 weeks, or even longer, depending on what flight is leaving out. It's a transit center. You got flights coming in and out every day. So we're in the final tank after we book, see medical, see all these people. We're in the final tank, and they come and call everybody to go to different pods. They come call everybody to go to different pods. And I was the last person. Me and this other paisa. But this other paisa is a loony bin. Like, he's an older man, and he was crazy. Like, literally, like, medical, like, whatever. Like, if you seen the dude, you know all his marbles aren't there. You know? So they come in and tell me, cuff up. I'm like, cuff up for what? I said, you're going to the shoe. Like, what? You know, I don't have no idea. I'm just fresh in the system. So I cuff up, and they take me to the shoe. They put me in the elevator. I got 2 COs on each. I got a CO on each side of me. So they're like, so you think you're a tough dude, huh? So you're a badass? You're a tough guy? I know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? But I'm not biting because they see on my case it's assault on a federal officer. So these dudes are trying to get me to jump out there so they can beat my brains in. Now, I've already read about, this is 2001, I've already read about the case in Oklahoma where his family was suing the federal BOP because their dad or their son had died in their custody in Oklahoma. Now, if anybody's been through Oklahoma, the ceiling is about 20 feet high from your bunk. It's 2 bunks, it's a bunk bed. The top bunk, you can stand up on the top bunk, stand up, and still not touch the ceiling. The ceiling is still, after you stand up, the ceiling is still almost 10 feet above your head. Well, the lawsuit, the BOP, the people in Oklahoma said that this guy, I don't know his name off the top of his head, but you can Google it. They said that he hung himself. But when forensic came, there was blood splatter on the ceiling. So imagine how hard one of these CO was hitting this guy for it to be blood splatter on the ceiling. So I read this case. And I'm sitting there like, damn, is this my fate? Because if you heard back in the 90s, they had the Cowboys in Florence, USP, who used to beat the brakes off of inmates in the shoe. Used to 4-point them, tie them up and 4-point them and beat them, and end up beating somebody to death. They were in the same lawsuit as the one I'm talking about in Oklahoma. I read them all in the same case. You know, how the Cowboys got taken down was one of them used to go home and beat his wife. You know, they both worked at the pen, and I guess they made her beat the inmates just like them. She was part of their crew, but she got tired of getting beaten at home, so she ended up turning state evidence on them, and none of them's in jail. I can't even positively say they don't even work in the system no more. They don't work in Florence no more, but who knows if they didn't get just moved around and whatnot, or even promoted. You know, but it's the kind of stuff that I'm entering. It's the environment I'm entering. So I go to the shoe. Now, in federal prison, they don't mix races. They don't mix Sallies up. Black's not gonna sell you up with whites unless they're from the same gang. Mexican's not gonna sell you with blacks. There's no interracial mixing. But me being Asian, I don't fall under the white, black, and Mexican segregation. So they pretty much try to put me in with anybody. And they happen to put me in with a white dude from Florida who's fresh in the system. His name is Joe Wells. They call him country. Sound like everything you want to sound like a country crack coming out from Florida sound like. But he was a little hustler. He was a gangster. He had like 100 years for robberies and whatnot. And, you know, they threw me in there, and he was a big dude. He was like 6'2", you know, big old country motherfucker. But they threw me in the cell with him, hoping and expecting for me to get my head cracked. But we ended up kicking it. We ended up gelling, and later on in 2008, we ended up doing time together in Atwater, California, and we're poker buddies out there and ran the poker table together in Atwater. So, what is my history? They always try to put me in a trick bag. So finally, you know, I was designated to Florence, Colorado. I stayed in the shoe. He left to wherever he was going. I'm still in the shoe 3-4 weeks before I catch the plane. But when I catch the plane, they rerouted me to Lompoc, California. So I'm a little confused because I got homies that come from Utah, all the ones we was in the county jail with, already on the yard in Florence, waiting for me to come, expecting me to come, because that's where I was designated. But, you know, fast forward a little bit, the reason I find out they rerouted me from Florence, Colorado to Lompoc was I wasn't just designated to the USP for Florence. My judge had committed me to ADX, which is the Supermax. But she didn't understand or realize that before you get accepted into that program, they have to review your case. There's a committee, a board, or whatever. And I didn't qualify. I'm not no freaking gang leader. I'm not no freaking cartel member. I'm nobody. I'm just a kid that was running around out here a little while, but I'm not, you know, anybody of influence or anybody of any high ranking in any type of organizations. And these are the individuals that they accept into the ADX program, because ADX program is no human contact, underground, locked down. You know, I spent over 26 years, 27 years in the system. I spent 23 years in almost 24 years in the USP straight. I met people that's been in ADX, in a cell, solitary confinement, hour rec 3 times a week for 30 years. I know people now that are still in there that we were, you know, because they got into whatever they got into when we was in Lompoc, still in there. A good friend of mine, Topo, he's a Black Hand, got in a riot in Lompoc where they beat up 50 COs. He's still in ADX underground right now. You know, so anyway, they reroute me to Lompoc. So there I am, talking to S.I.S, and they're like, "You're from Utah. You got gangs in Utah? Oh, you're a gangbanger?" You know, and then I had long hair. And the reason I grew out my hair was, you know, I was just growing it out because, you know, growing up, I couldn't have long hair. You know, I went to church, clean cut. You know, my dad wouldn't let me have long hair. So I was like, me and my homeboys, when we was in the county fighting our case, we started growing our hair out. But while I'm in jail and I'm going to federal court, I meet people that coming back from the system or been in the system, and they're telling me, "Oh man, you probably should cut your hair," you know, because, you know, I'm young. You know, I don't consider myself handsome, but I guess, you know, that's the game. Oh, you're, you know, whatever. They're like, "Man, that's just like an advertisement for whatever, for these predators out there in the pen." So the more I heard that, the more adamant I was gonna insist on growing my hair, because, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I wanted somebody to jump out there and try me. I grew my hair all the way down, freaking past my waist twice, you know, through the course of my time. I have it long now, but you see it's getting thin, so, you know, that's why it's not long now. But other than that, I'd grow it out. But that's the reason, you know, so when I entered the system, my hair was down to my shoulder. And so I'm talking to S.I.S, and they're like, "What? They got gang members in Utah?" Nah, they don't got no gang members in Utah. You're in California now. We got real gang members here. Yeah. And they're gonna like you. You got some pretty hair and pretty lips. You know. But I know everything they're saying is just to try to get me to react, because they see that I have that assault on a federal officer, and they just want every excuse to try to punish me some way, somehow, to justify them beating my brains in. You know? But I didn't play their game. They talked their shit and whatnot. So they returned me back to my cell. So at the end of the interview, half of them, there was like 16, 17 of us that came off the bus. Half of them already disappeared. Like, meaning that, come to find out later, they checked in. Like, they're told the S.I.S. they can't hit the yard. They were too scared to hit the yard, so they put him in protective custody. So there was like 8 or 9 of us left. And out of 8 or 9 of us, six of them went to the yard that night. But me and 2 other had to go to the SHU because S.I.S. said we had to go pending a captain's review. So my first day off the bus, I couldn't even hit the yard. I went to the SHU. I go to the SHU. I meet this old Japanese dude who's been in the system for however long, you know. I got my bedroll. I put it on the top bunk, and while me and him are getting to know each other, talking, they come and call us out for a shower because there's no shower in the cell. Lompoc cell is about literally the size of this couch. You can go like this from your bunk and hit the wall, and your toilet is right here. And you got this much room between the edge of your bunk to the front door. So it's very tiny. And you got 2 grown men in there, 24 hours a day in there. You only get 3. You only get rec an hour 3 times a week. So they pull us out for a shower. So when they pull us out for a shower, the guard comes over and say, hey, they just shut down our cell. He comes over and he finds an open blade. Back in Lompoc, just in Lompoc, they haven't done it anywhere else I've been, but in Lompoc, an open blade razor is a 101, which is a knife shop. And he's like, hey, who's this? And my cell's like, hey, I just moved in the cell. And I told him I just came off the bus. They're like, all right. So long story short, just to end this segment, before I even hit the SHU, before I even hit the yard, I already got written up for a weapons charge and was sanctioned to 30 days in the SHU. So I spent the next 30 days in the freaking SHU before I even had the captain's review. You know? And so finally, after 30 days, well, while I was in there, while I was sleeping, one morning, like, you know, when you're in that between stage of awakeness and sleep, I hear the guards running. They blew up the towers. They blew up the towers. You know, in my mind, I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? What tower? What tower? They blew up the tower. They blew up the other one. And now you hear all this commotion because whatever was going on, they were locking up all the Muslims on the yard in the SHU. They were taking them all off the yard and locking all the Muslims in the SHU. You know? And then when people get newspapers or magazines, after they read it, they pass it down off the tier. You know, because not everybody gets mail, not everybody have people sending them magazines or newspaper or whatever. So, like the 3rd day from that lucid dream that I thought I had, the USA Today was slid under my door. I picked it up and looked at it, and I saw the Twin Towers in flame. And I was like, whoa. And it was just surreal. So, until next time, I'll let you know what happened when I entered the yard. When I finally got to the yard. But welcome to USP, man. Hope you stay tuned.